maybe some of you out there do, who are saying, well, that's not the Sally Bingham I know. You have a Sally Bingham who lives in Santa Fe. She's been here for years. She's a playwright and an author. She's about a foot taller than I am. We do share the same name, and I'm very often confused with her. So when I saw that folks going out, I thought, they took one look at me and realized that they came to see a different Sally Bingham. She wasn't here. So I want to thank you, Joan, for bringing me down here and your inspiration. And Tom Stark, I don't know where you are, but you're a wonderful chair of this board. Tom comes to our annual meeting in Washington, D.C., when we gather all of our group together to share practices and to talk about what policies we'll be pushing over the next year. And I thought today, and I discussed it with Joan, that so many people ask me, and I give a sort of technical talk on climate and why it's a religious issue, but that it might be fun this afternoon for me to tell you how this whole thing got started. Edwina said, you know, we just celebrated our 50th year, which is true. Prior to it being Interfaith Power Light campaign, which started in 2000, we had the Episcopal Church and several of its congregations buying renewable energy in California, and then they couldn't. But I just want to start with, and hopefully will inspire some of you to continue this work, to talk to your friends and family, talk to anybody who doesn't seem to think that climate change is real, to don't give up. Just keep talking about it. And let me tell you my story.
Just a sec, can you raise the microphone a little bit?
Raise it?
Or get it closer to you somehow?
Yes, is that better? Well, I can stand over here next
Yeah.
to you. Is that better?
Most of us have old
I can't read the
ears.
words, but I can stand over here. In the mid-1980s, my husband and I and our 3 children moved back to San Francisco from New York City, where we were living. We'd both grown up in California, and we were very happy to be headed home. Once settled in San Francisco, I was invited to be on the National Board of Environmental Defense Fund. And it wasn't because I was a well-known environmentalist, but rather because my husband had done very well on Wall Street. And there was potential for generous giving. One of the board members, who was a friend of ours and very persuasive about getting me to join an organization that I really didn't know much about. And she said, Sally, you want to go back to California and play tennis and sit at the pool and read magazines, or do you want to do something worthwhile with your life? And she knew, though, that I hadn't done anything outside of being, although this is not anything. I was a nurse, a tutor, a chauffeur, a cleaning lady, a laundress, and a caretaker for my family. But with 2 children in or close to college and 1 in the 2nd grade, she just assumed that I might have some extra time on my hands. And she was right, and I accepted the invitation. I said yes, and I went on the board of Environmental Defense Fund. Now, 2 things that will come up later I want you to remember. I had a wealthy husband, and I had a tendency to say yes. Remember those things. So when one is a board member of a national environmental organization, and you attend regular meetings, you get a brilliant education on what humans are doing to the planet. At least at Environmental Defense Fund you do. Subjects like overfishing, deforestation, lead in gasoline, antibiotics in our poultry and agriculture, things that were dangerous for humans, whether it was asbestos, growth hormones that were in our stock that we were eating. All of these things I was learning about, and even climate change. Michael Oppenheimer, who's now working at Princeton, was on the EDF board at that time, a climate scientist talking about climate change in the early 80s. So I was then, and obviously still am, an Episcopalian. I wasn't a zealot, but I did regularly attend services, and my youngest child was an acolyte. So I was a member of 2 communities, and I was devoted to both of them, EDF and the Episcopal Church. At one meeting, I'd be learning about what humans are doing to the planet in the destruction of the earth, and at the other place, the other meetings, people were praying for a reverence for the earth. But there were no prayers at the EDF meetings, and there was never any discussion of the destruction that humans were causing to the earth in the church services. So how could we parishioners sit in a pew and profess a love for God, pray for a reverence for the earth, love our neighbors as ourselves, and let God's creation, what God called good, be destroyed? Well, we couldn't. So stirring deeply in me was this question. So I took my questions to the clergy at our church, to my bishop, to our cathedral, and to many of my neighbors who were Roman and Jewish, Presbyterians, and many other Protestant denominations. Nobody had ever heard a clergy person talk about protection of creation from the pulpit. Wow. I was surprised, and knowing what I did about the damage that humans were doing to God's creation, I thought that people in the pew should know about it too. But the rector at my church suggested that I go to seminary and find out where was the disconnect between what we say we believe in and our behavior. He thought that I should go to seminary before he would talk about this maybe hot subject from the pulpit. So I said yes, and the wealthy husband paid for it. But not so fast. I had never been to college. So once I found out that you cannot set out to get a master's degree without an undergrad degree, I had to do 4 years of college. I was 45 years old, and it was a challenge, but it was really fun, and I inhaled the education. It was a Jesuit education because the University of San Francisco, where I went, is a Jesuit college. So I graduated 4 years later in 1989, and I was even more determined to tell people in the pews that humans were destroying the planet. We were hypocrites, sinners, and worse. But with seminary on the horizon, and having told my bishop that this was not about holy orders, I had to put earth care ministry aside for the time being and continue studying theology. I didn't think that I would ever be in a pulpit, and nor was I really interested in that role. Nobody had ever been ordained to do ecological work, prison and hospital chaplains, but no chaplain for creation care, and really no ecological ministry at all. So from 1990, 1994, I studied theology and made further progress in understanding why no one mentioned the environment from the pulpit. The call to be stewards of creation is throughout most religious teachings. But until very recently, it hasn't been taught in seminary. There were no courses in environmental ethics. There was no focus on the fact that God put Adam in the garden to till it and to keep it. We were placed here to be the gardeners. Why didn't anybody see that or pay attention to it? It certainly is in Scripture, but one had to find it and shine a light on it, or otherwise it was skipped over. So once I graduated from seminary, I started a committee to explore environmental ministry in the Diocese of California. I had a master's degree, and I felt qualified to chair such a committee, and the bishop supported me doing that rather than doing seminary work in a church, because remember, I'm not on a track for holy orders, at least at this point. Now, an important point that you need to understand is that once I graduated from college, and then I went on to seminary, I was a changed person. I started to have opinions, thought out, studied opinions, and they turned out to often be in opposition to my husband. The more I educated I became, the more I found that we had different values, and the more difficult it became to live in harmony with one another. Something which obviously is important for a marriage. It's important for any healthy relationship. But I found myself single, which was, and don't be sad, it was most likely a good thing because it allowed me to move forward aggressively, working to engage people of faith in stewardship of creation. So the committee that was formed to engage the Diocese of California in environmental awareness, the people that were on this committee put a lot of pressure on me to get into the ordination process. And this is what I had actually told the bishop I wasn't interested in doing. And I was reluctant, and I resisted for another 2 years. But the idea took hold, and as much as I wanted to say no, I said yes, and I got into the process.